Hey, my name's Liam. I'm 26, and I work the night shift at this small clinic tucked away in the suburbs of Virginia. It's nothing fancy, just a quiet spot where we monitor folks with high blood pressure, handle routine checkups, and send them on their way with meds or advice. No ER drama, no life or death rushes. That's why I like it. My life's pretty straightforward. Clock in at dusk, jot down patient notes, check vitals, and head home to crash until noon. I rent a little wooden cabin on the edge of town with a buddy who's always out on business trips. So most nights, it's just me, the hum of the fluorescent lights, and the occasional creak of the old building settling in the wind. The pay's decent enough to cover my bills and the occasional beer with friends, but it's not like I'm saving for a mansion. I dropped out of art school a few years back, couldn't hack the loans and the pressure. So this gig keeps me afloat while I figure out what's next. Nights like this one, though, blend into each other. I'm usually alone after 10 p.m., flipping through charts or scrolling my phone to kill time. But that night, God, that night was different from the jump. It was pushing midnight when I heard the footsteps. Not the slow shuffle of a regular patient, but hurried, almost desperate clips echoing down the empty hallway. I glanced up from my desk, mid-sentence in some paperwork, and my heart skipped a beat. There she was, a woman in her early 40s, maybe mid-40s, pushing through the glass door like she'd been running from something. Her brown hair, streaked with highlights that caught the dim lobby light, was tousled and damp, like she'd been out in the misty Virginia night. She had on a long coat that hung loose over what looked like casual clothes underneath, jeans and a sweater maybe, and her face. Sharp features, tired eyes that held a mix of exhaustion and something deeper, like a storm brewing just below the surface. She wasn't a regular. I'd have remembered her. The clinic's in a small town near the Blue Ridge Mountains where everyone knows everyone, but she carried herself like she was from somewhere else, poised even in her rush. She strode right up to the counter, her hands gripping the edge like it was the only thing keeping her steady. I stood up, fumbling with my pen. "Ma'am, we're not really set up for emergencies here. If it's urgent, I can call—" But she cut me off, her voice low and steady, though laced with a tremor that hit me like a gut punch. "Do it quick, as fast as you can." I froze. What? My mind raced. Do what? She wasn't bleeding, no obvious injury. Her eyes locked onto mine, dark and pleading, but not panicked. It was worse than panic. It was resignation, like she'd hit a wall and this was her last stop. I I need someone I can trust. Tonight? Just tonight. The words hung in the air, heavy and confusing. Trust for what? This wasn't a hospital. We didn't do walk-ins like this. My training kicked in, check for signs of distress, ask questions, but nothing prepared me for that. Her coat slipped open a bit as she leaned forward, revealing a necklace with a simple pendant, and I caught a whiff of faint perfume mixed with rain. She looked put together on the surface, but her knuckles were white on the counter, and her breathing was shallow, like she was holding back a flood. I blinked, trying to process. "Ma'am, are you hurt? Do you need a doctor? We're closing soon, but I can—" She shook her head, her eyes never leaving mine. "No doctor, just help, please." The please cracked something in her voice, and that's when the weight hit me. This wasn't about a sprained ankle or a headache. This was deeper, emotional maybe? I'd seen it before in patients, the ones who came in for blood pressure checks but really needed someone to listen. But never like this, never so raw and immediate. My stomach twisted. Why me? I'm just a tech, not a therapist. At 26, I've dealt with my own crap, losing my mom young, scraping by without much direction, but nothing like whatever storm she was carrying. I glanced at the clock. 12:05 a.m. The clinic was empty, no other staff on shift. Protocol said to refer her to the ER downtown, but her eyes, they were begging without words. "Okay," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Sit down, let me get your vitals first." She nodded, easing into the chair across from me, her coat pooling around her like a shield. As I wrapped the cuff around her arm, her skin was cool, pulse racing, 140/90, way too high for someone her age. Not critical, but a red flag. "What's your name?" I asked, keeping it professional while my mind screamed questions. "Sophia," she whispered, her fingers fidgeting with the pendant. "Just Sophia." No last name, no details. I noted it down, but my thoughts were spinning. Who was she? Why here? Of all places. The mountains were quiet this time of year, folks hunkered down against the chill, but she looked like she'd driven from somewhere farther. Maybe the city, judging by her polished nails and the faint makeup smudges under her eyes, like she'd been crying earlier. As the machine beeped, confirming the high reading, she leaned back, closing her eyes for a second. I didn't plan this, she murmured. I just drove and ended up here. Her voice broke on the last word, and that's when the inner turmoil really sank in for me. I felt heavy, like I was being pulled into a secret that wasn't mine to carry. Memories of my mom flashed, her quiet strength, the way she'd hide her pain until it broke her. Sophia reminded me of that. Strong on the outside, crumbling inside. You don't have to tell me everything, I said, trying to sound reassuring. But if you're in danger? She opened her eyes, shaking her head. Not danger, just empty, so empty I can't breathe. The confession hit hard. Empty. I knew that feeling, waking up alone in my cabin, staring at the ceiling, wondering if this was all there was. But hearing it from her, a stranger who looked like she had her life together, made it worse. I wanted to ask more. Who hurt you? Why tonight? But I held back. Instead, I offered water, and as she took it, our fingers brushed. A spark? No, just static from the dry air. But her touch lingered in my mind. The minutes stretched. She sipped slowly, her shoulders relaxing a fraction. I checked the clock again, closing time. We have to lock up, I said gently. But if you need a ride or something. She looked up, her eyes searching mine. Could you just stay with me a bit? I don't want to be alone. There it was, the real plea. My heart pounded. This was crossing lines. I wasn't trained for this. But turning her away felt wrong, cruel even. All right, I heard myself say. Let me close up. As I flipped off the lights and locked the doors, the weight pressed harder. Who was this woman? What had brought her here to me of all people? The night air was crisp as we stepped outside, the Blue Ridge silhouette dark against the stars. She shivered, pulling her coat tighter. Thank you, she whispered. I nodded, but inside, turmoil churned. This wasn't just a patient. This was someone breaking, and I'd chosen to catch the pieces. Little did I know that choice would shatter my quiet life too. After we stepped out into the crisp night air, I locked the clinic doors behind us, the keys jingling louder than usual in the silence. Sophia stood there on the sidewalk, her arms wrapped around herself, staring at the empty parking lot like it was a void she might fall into. The Blue Ridge Mountains loomed in the distance, dark and indifferent under the stars. My truck was the only vehicle left, an old beat-up Ford that had seen better days, but it started reliably enough. Come on, I said, nodding toward it. I'll drive you somewhere safe. A hotel, maybe? Or the shelter downtown? She hesitated, her breath visible in the cold. No hotels. I can't be alone right now. Her voice was softer now, the edge of desperation dulling into something more vulnerable. I paused, keys in hand. This was way outside my job description, hell, outside my life. But turning her away felt impossible. All right, I muttered, more to myself than her. My place isn't far, it's just a cabin, nothing special, but my roommate's out of town. You can crash on the couch for the night. She nodded without a word and we climbed in. The drive was short, 10 minutes through winding back roads lined with pines, but it felt eternal. The heater hummed, filling the cab with warm air that smelled faintly of pine air freshener and old coffee cups. I kept my eyes on the road, glancing at her occasionally in the glow of the dashboard lights. She stared out the window, her reflection pale and distant. You don't have to do this, she said finally, breaking the silence. I know it's asking too much. You're not asking, I replied, keeping my tone even. I'm offering. Truth was, I didn't know why I was doing it. Maybe it was the way her plea echoed my mom's quiet struggles, the ones she'd hidden until they consumed her. Or maybe I was just tired of my own routine, the endless nights alone with nothing but paperwork and regrets. Either way, we pulled up to my cabin, a small wooden place nestled at the edge of the woods, with a gravel driveway and a porch light that flickered when the wind picked up. Inside, the air was warmer, carrying the faint scent of wood polish and whatever takeout I'd had earlier. My roommate, Jake, Was gone for the week on some sales trip, so the place was mine, cluttered with sketchbooks from my abandoned art days, a half-empty fridge, and a living room couch that doubled as a guest bed on rare occasions. I flipped on a lamp casting a soft yellow glow. "Make yourself comfortable," I said, gesturing to the couch. "I'll grab some blankets." Sophia shrugged off her coat, revealing a simple sweater and jeans underneath. She looked around, her eyes taking in the modest setup, the mismatched furniture, the stack of books on the coffee table. "This is cozy," she said, almost like she was trying to convince herself. I handed her a blanket and a pillow, then busied myself in the kitchen, boiling water for tea. Chamomile, something calming my mom used to swear by. As the kettle whistled, I stole a glance at her. She was sitting now, hands clasped in her lap, but her posture was rigid, like she was holding back a dam. "Here," I said, handing her a mug. Our fingers brushed again, and this time, it wasn't just static, it was a spark of connection, fleeting but real. She took a sip, closing her eyes for a moment. "Thank you, Liam." It was the first time she'd used my name. I'd introduced myself back at the clinic. "I'm Sophia," she added, as if remembering manners. "I live out near the Blue Ridge foothills, quiet area. Too quiet sometimes." I nodded, leaning against the counter. "What brings you to the clinic tonight, if you don't mind me asking?" I kept it light, not pushing, but curious. Her vitals had been off, pulse racing, blood pressure spiked, but no fever, no physical signs of trauma. It screamed stress, the kind that builds over years. She set the mug down, her hands trembling slightly. "It's not my body that's broken," she said quietly. "It's everything else." She paused, staring into the steam rising from her tea. "I used to be a financial advisor, high-stakes stuff, managing portfolios for people who thought money could fix anything. But a year ago, after things fell apart at home, I quit. Couldn't handle the pressure anymore." "Things at home?" I echoed, sitting across from her on an armchair. I didn't want to pry, but something in her voice pulled me in, like she needed to say it out loud. She sighed, her shoulders slumping. "My marriage. Or what's left of it. We've been together for over a decade, but it's like living with a stranger. No fights, no drama, just silence. Emptiness. I drive around at night sometimes just to feel like I'm moving." Her eyes met mine, glistening. Tonight, it hit harder. I couldn't go back to that house, not alone with my thoughts. I felt a pang in my chest. It mirrored my own history too closely. My mom in a loveless marriage, pouring everything into me until a car accident took her when I was 17. Dad bailed soon after, leaving me to fend for myself. "I get that," I said softly. "Sometimes the quiet hurts more than the noise." She looked at me then, really looked, like she was seeing me for the first time. "You do, don't you?" We talked a bit more, surface stuff at first. She mentioned her home, a secluded spot near the mountains, perfect for escaping the world, but trapping you in your head. I shared about my job, how it was steady but unfulfilling, a far cry from the art dreams I'd shelved. The conversation flowed easier than expected, like we'd skipped the awkward small talk and jumped straight to something real. In my mind, a strange bond was forming. Not romantic, not yet, but a quiet understanding. She wasn't just a stranger anymore. She was someone who'd wandered into my life carrying the same kind of weight I knew too well. As the clock ticked past 1 a.m., she yawned, the exhaustion finally catching up. "I should let you sleep," she said, but I shook my head. "Stay as long as you need. The couch is yours." She smiled faintly, the first real one I'd seen. "You're kinder than you know, Liam." Lying in my bed later, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the heaviness. Why her? Why now? But deep down I knew. Some people don't need pills or prescriptions. They need a safe space to breathe and someone who won't judge. And tonight, for whatever reason, that someone was me. As the clock in the living room ticked past 2 a.m., the cabin felt smaller, the air thicker with unspoken words. Sophia had settled on the couch, wrapped in the blanket I'd given her, but she didn't lie down. She just sat there, mug of tea cooling in her hands, staring at the floor like it held answers. I paced the kitchen a bit, pretending to tidy up, wiping counters that were already clean, rinsing a glass that didn't need it. Anything to give her space. But the silence stretched, heavy and uncomfortable until I couldn't ignore it anymore. "You okay?" I asked, leaning in the doorway. Stupid question, I knew, but it was all I had. She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. No, she whispered, not really. Then, without warning, she set the mug down with a clink that echoed too loud in the quiet room. Her hands covered her face and her shoulders started to shake. At first it was silent, just the tremble of her body. But then the sobs came, raw and broken, like something she'd held in for years finally cracking free. I froze for a second, my heart pounding. What do I do? Hug her? Leave her alone? But instinct took over. I crossed the room in 2 steps and sat beside her. Not too close, but close enough. Hey, I said softly, my hand hovering awkwardly before resting on her shoulder. It's okay, let it out. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned into it, her body curling toward me as the tears flowed. I'm sorry, she gasped between sobs. I didn't mean to dump this on you. You don't even know me. You're not dumping anything, I replied, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. Sometimes you just need to break. She nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand, but the words spilled out anyway, like a dam bursting. My husband, he never asks if I'm okay. We've been married 10 years, Liam. 10 years of lying next to someone who doesn't see me. No touches that mean anything, no words that heal. Just routine. Emptiness. Her voice cracked on the last word and she clutched the blanket tighter. I gave up everything for him, my dreams, my career path. I was going to be an architect, designing homes where people could feel safe. But I traded it for stability for him. And now it's like I'm invisible in my own life. I listened, the weight of her pain settling over me like a fog. Invisible. The word hit hard, stirring up memories I'd buried deep. My mom had been like that, pouring her soul into a marriage that gave nothing back, smiling through the silence until it broke her. She died in that car accident when I was 17, skidding on a rainy road after a late shift, probably exhausted from holding it all in. Dad left soon after, couldn't handle the grief or the responsibility. I'd been alone ever since, piecing together a life from scraps. That sounds exhausting, I said finally, my throat tight, like you're carrying the world and no one's noticing. Sophia lifted her head, her tear-streaked face searching mine. You get it. How? I hesitated, staring at my hands. I'd never talked about this with strangers, hell, barely with friends. But something about her vulnerability pulled it out of me. My mom, I admitted, she was the same. Strong, always putting everyone else first. My dad, he was there, but not really. Never asked how she felt, never shared the load. She hid her pain so well, but I saw it in the way she'd stare out the window or cry quietly when she thought I was asleep. Then one night, she was gone. Car crash. I was 17. It wrecked me. Her eyes softened, the sobs easing into quiet sniffles. I'm so sorry, Liam. That must have been shattering. It was, I said, the old ache surfacing. I dropped out of art school after that. Couldn't focus, couldn't afford it without her. Ended up here, in this job, just surviving. But you learn to spot it in others, that quiet hurt. She reached out then, her hand covering mine. A simple touch, but it sent a warmth through me I hadn't felt in years. Thank you for sharing that. Most people, they don't understand. We sat like that for a while, the silence less oppressive now. Her breathing steadied, and she leaned back against the couch, exhaustion etching deeper lines on her face. I feel like such a fool, she murmured, showing up at a clinic like some lost soul, but tonight, it was too much. The house felt like a prison. No kids, no real connection, just echoes of what could have been. You're not a fool, I said firmly. You're human. And sometimes humans need a break from the weight. She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. You're wise for 26. I shrugged. Life teaches you quick when it has to. The conversation drifted then, bits and pieces of her life tumbling out. She talked about her job as a financial advisor, long hours, high stakes, advising people on building futures while her own crumbled. The marriage had started with promise, she said, but turned cold over time. No abuse, no affairs, just a slow fade into indifference. I thought I could fix it, she confessed. But you can't fix someone who doesn't see the problem. My own pain mirrored hers, and I found myself opening up more. About the sketches I still doodled in my free time, dreams of creating art that captured emotion but fear holding me back. After Mom, I stopped believing in futures, and I admitted, just day to day. Sophia squeezed my hand. Maybe that's why we're here tonight. Two people who know what it's like to feel unseen. The words hung between us, raw and real. I felt exposed, vulnerable in a way I hadn't in years. But there was comfort in it too. Like sharing the burden lightened it. As the hours slipped toward dawn, her sobs faded completely, replaced by quiet reflection. I should try to sleep, she said eventually, pulling the blanket up. Yeah, I agreed, standing. If you need anything? She nodded. You've already given more than enough. Back in my room, the ache lingered. Her story had cracked open old wounds, but in the pain there was a strange sense of connection. For the first time in forever, I didn't feel so alone in my grief. Little did I know, this was just the start of something that would heal us both, or break us further. The morning light filtered through the cabin's thin curtains, gray and muted from the light rain pattering against the windows. I woke up earlier than usual, the events of the night replaying in my head like a foggy dream. Sophia's sobs, her confessions. They'd stirred up too much for sleep to come easy. I slipped out of bed quietly, not wanting to wake her if she'd finally drifted off on the couch. The floorboards creaked under my feet as I padded into the living room. She was already up, standing by the window with her back to me, staring out at the drizzling woods. The blanket was folded neatly on the couch, and she'd made herself a cup of coffee from the pot I'd left out. In her hands, she held something, a crumpled sheet of paper, yellowed at the edges. She didn't turn around right away, but I could see the tension in her shoulders had eased a bit from last night. Morning, I said softly, pouring myself a cup. Sleep okay? She glanced over her shoulder, her eyes clearer now, though still shadowed by fatigue. A little. Thank you again, Liam. For everything. She turned fully, and that's when I noticed the paper. A faded sketch, lines and shapes that looked like architectural plans. Houses, maybe? It was intricate, even in its age. What's that? I asked, nodding at it as I sat at the kitchen table. She hesitated, then walked over and placed it in front of me. An old design, from college. I was studying architecture before life got in the way. Her voice was quiet, laced with a mix of nostalgia and regret. She sat across from me, folding her hands around her mug. I used to dream of building homes, places where people could feel secure, start over. But I dropped it when I got married. Chose stability instead. I studied the drawing, clean lines, thoughtful details. It had heart, the kind of passion I'd once poured into my own sketches. You ever wish you could go back to it? She laughed bitterly, a sad smile tugging at her lips. Every day. I thought I could create shelters for others, but I couldn't even hold on to my own self. Her eyes met mine, vulnerable again. Marriage. It swallowed me. I became the wife who managed everything, the finances, the house, the silence. No room for dreams. The rain picked up outside, drumming steadily on the roof. I felt that familiar pull, the urge to share, to connect. Last night's conversation had opened a door, and now it swung wide. I get that, I said, standing up. I went to my room and rummaged through a drawer, pulling out my old sketchbook from art school. The pages were dog-eared, filled with half-finished drawings, landscapes, faces, abstract emotions I'd tried to capture before life derailed me. I brought it back and set it on the table. This was me before the clinic. I wanted to create art that made people feel seen. But after Mom died, I quit. Too much pain, too many bills. Sophia's fingers traced the edges of my book, her expression softening. These are beautiful. Why stop? Same reason as you, I guess. Life happened. Survival mode kicked in. I sat back down, the rain a soothing backdrop. But seeing your design, it reminds me we don't have to stay stuck. We spent the morning like that, flipping through pages, her old blueprints, my forgotten sketches. She talked more about her marriage, The slow erosion of affection, the nights alone even when he was home. He never hit me, never cheated, at least not that I know. But the indifference. It kills you slower. I nodded, sharing my own scars. Dad's abandonment after the accident, the guilt I carried for not seeing Mom's pain sooner. She was like you, strong, silent. I wish I'd asked more, listened better. Sophia reached across the table, her hand on mine again. You're listening now. To me. The touch lingered, warm and grounding. It wasn't flirtation, it was acknowledgement, a bridge between our hurts. By afternoon, the rain let up, and we stepped onto the porch for fresh air. She breathed deeply, like she was inhaling freedom. I feel lighter, she admitted. Talking about it, facing it. It's the first time in years. Me too, I said. Like we're both starting to heal, just by being here. We walked the wooded path behind the cabin, the ground soft and muddy. She opened up about small joys she'd forgotten. Weekend hikes, sketching in cafes. I shared my secret doodles during shifts, how art still called to me. Gradually, her gaze shifted, from gratitude to something deeper, a mutual respect blooming into connection. Not love, not yet, but a shared path forward. As evening fell, she looked at me with renewed spark. Maybe it's not too late for either of us. I smiled. No, it's not. A few weeks slipped by after that rainy morning, each day blending into the next with a quiet rhythm I hadn't known I needed. Sophia didn't vanish from my life like some fleeting clinic encounter. Instead, she became a steady presence, not overwhelming, but constant, like the Blue Ridge fog that rolls in at dawn and lifts by noon. She found a small apartment in the heart of town, closer to the city center than her old, secluded place near the mountains. It was modest, much like my cabin. One bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a balcony overlooking a bustling street. It's a start, she told me over the phone the day she moved in. No more echoes in empty rooms. I helped her unpack a bit, carrying boxes up the stairs, arranging her old blueprints on a makeshift desk by the window. She dug them out from storage, those yellowed designs from her college days, and now they spread across the table like forgotten treasures. I'm going to try again, she said, her voice firmer than before. Not for anyone else. For me. I watched her trace the lines with her finger, her eyes lighting up in a way they hadn't that first night. It was healing in motion, slow but real. My routine shifted too. After my shifts at the clinic, I'd swing by her place with 2 cups of coffee, black for me, a splash of cream for her, and maybe a book I'd picked up from the thrift store downtown. We didn't call it dating, hell, we didn't call it anything. It wasn't about labels or grand gestures. We'd sit on her balcony as the sun dipped low, talking about everything and nothing. She'd sketch while I read, the scratch of her pencil against paper a soothing counterpoint to the distant hum of traffic. One Sunday morning, our ritual solidified. We met at a little roadside cafe on the outskirts of town, the kind with worn wooden tables and bottomless refills. It became our spot, no reservations, just showing up. That first time, she arrived with her sketchbook tucked under her arm, and I had a novel in hand. We claimed a corner table by the window, the Virginia sun slanting through the glass, warming the air. You think I can do this? She asked, flipping open to a fresh page. Her voice held a hint of doubt, but less than before. I set my book down, meeting her gaze. You don't need to do anything new, just keep going. This time for yourself. She smiled then, a real one that crinkled the corners of her eyes and started drawing. Simple lines at first, a house outline, then details emerging. A porch, windows that let in light, a garden path. I watched her work, the concentration easing the lines of worry on her face. In those moments, I felt my own wounds softening too. The art school dreams I'd buried, they stirred again. I'd started doodling during breaks at work, quick sketches of the mountains, faces from memory. Sharing them with her made it feel possible, like I wasn't chasing ghosts anymore. Our connection deepened without rush. We didn't hold hands in public or text every hour, that wasn't us. But there were quiet intimacies. A shared laugh over a burnt dinner she tried to cook. A walk through the woods where she pointed out hidden trails she'd hiked as a kid. She opened up more about her past. The marriage that had started with love but faded into routine. The child she'd longed for but never had. the career she'd sacrificed. I thought stability meant safety, she confessed one evening, as we sat on her balcony, watching the stars peek through the clouds. But it just meant stagnation. I shared my fragments too. The anger at my dad for leaving, the guilt over not saving mom, the way I'd numbed myself with routine to avoid feeling it all. Meeting you, it's like waking up, I admitted. Seeing that pain doesn't have to define everything. She nodded, her hand brushing mine. We're both rebuilding, aren't we? Piece by piece. Life wasn't perfect, far from it. There were days when her ex called, stirring up old doubts, and nights when my shifts left me too drained to talk. But we navigated them together with patience I'd never known I had. She submitted her first new design to a local contest, a simple home blueprint inspired by the mountains. And when she got a call back, her excitement lit up the phone line. "It's small," she said, "but it's mine." I celebrated with her over coffee, feeling a pride that mirrored my own small steps, enrolling in an online art class, sketching more boldly. Outside the cafe window that Sunday, sunlight slanted through the awning, casting golden patterns on the table. Sophia's latest drawing took shape. A cozy house with a welcoming door, labeled in neat script at the bottom. A place to come home to. She paused, pencil hovering, and looked at me. "This is what you've given me, Liam, a place to start." I smiled, the warmth spreading through me. We've given it to each other. Our lives intertwined gently, full of hope. Not a fairy tale ending, but an open road ahead. A bond forged in vulnerability, promising futures we could build one day at a time.